I have a cold, but can we stop this robot or whatever voice? Right. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for to keep you waiting. We had a group meeting, EPP group meeting, and as it is a plenary session, there were some very important decisions to be taken, so just couldn't leave earlier. It's my honor to welcome you all tonight in the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and I would like to thank the European Jewish Association and its managing director, Mr. Georgios Papadakis, and advisor, Ms. Nezka Figel, for their assistance in organizing this event. In a few days, we will commemorate the International Holocaust Remembrance Day in honor of the 78th anniversary of the liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp. We start the commemoration already tonight with the presentation of Arija Mittlemana's book, Paths of Righteous, Stories of Heroism, Humanity and Hope. Let me give a warm welcome to Mr. Mittlemana and the entire delegation who flew all the way from the United States to be here, as well as the US Consul General in Strasbourg, Mrs. Dara Paradiso, and President of the Antwerp Jewish Forum, Baroness Regina Sluzny. Sorry, Baroness. I'm especially pleased to Croatia's European Commission Vice President Dubravka Šuica and the former Croatian Minister of Science and Education, globally known scientist and Professor Dr. Dragan Primorac. It is an honor that some of the brave people featured in the book are with us here today. Ms. Bright, Mrs. Gracious, Ms. Stoltz, and Mr. Primorac are a true inspiration for all of us, and I'm humbled to welcome you all here tonight. Mr. Mittlemana's book brings us much needed positivity and reassurance. It was an insightful and touching to read 8 stories about 9 diverse individuals who spoke for Israel and Jewish people in their own way and helped in the fight against discrimination and anti-Semitism. On a personal note, I'm delighted to promote a book that also embodies the strong friendship and the good diplomatic relations between Croatia and Israel, and the strong transatlantic partnership of the European Union and the United States. During my diplomatic career, and currently in the European Parliament, I'm strongly engaged in these topics, particularly in my work and activities as Vice President of the Committee of Foreign Affairs and the EPP Group, Vice Chair, as well in the Committee on Culture and Education, Subcommittee on Security and Defense, and the EPP Working Group on Interreligious and Intercultural Dialogue. This year, we mark the 78th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Millions of lives have been lost during one of the darkest chapters of our European history, and many more have been changed irrevocably. It is our duty to ensure that history never repeats itself again. I express my gratitude one more time to Mr. Mittlemana for giving us hope and proof that this world is still filled with light. We will continue to nurture the culture of remembrance and work individually to create a society united in diversity and based on peace, freedom, mutual understanding, respect, and solidarity. Without further ado, let us hear the message of our European Parliament's President, Roberta Metsola, who sends her regards and apologies for not being able to join us tonight.
The liberation of the Auschwitz-Birkenau concentration camp and the remembrance of the horrors of the Holocaust is still today also important. Despite decades of effort, we have not yet done enough to combat discrimination, to fight anti-Semitism. Fear still exists because anti-Semitism still exists, and because the fundamental right to be free from discrimination, irrespective of gender, race, ethnic origin, or sexual orientation, is threatened daily. Too often we hear of attacks or plots to attack synagogues. Too many live in fear. In recent years, we have seen an escalation of anti-Semitic conspiracy myths, disinformation, and violence against communities that move seamlessly between the online and offline world. Fear is present because the threat remains. And this is why the fight against anti-Semitism to build a world of justice, mutual understanding, and tolerance must go on. And this is why Arija Mittleman's book that tells the stories of 8 diverse non-Jewish individuals who are standing up against anti-Semitism and Holocaust denial is so relevant. The stories of these 8 heroes who have taken paths of righteousness serve to build bridges between faiths. They serve to give faith in humanity and to have faith that people of goodwill will act together to defeat bigotry. Let me thank Željana Zovko for being instrumental in organizing today's panel discussion with author Arija Mittleman and Americans and Europeans featured in the book. I wish you fruitful discussions and hope that today's gathering serves to strengthen further long-standing transatlantic friendship.
So we have an excellent president. Now I will give the floor to Madam Figel, who will continue with the chairing this panel.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the European Jewish Association and Rabbi Margolin, the chairman and founder of our association, we are very happy to be here. And we would like to thank you for giving us this opportunity. I will give the floor to my colleague, Yorgos Papadakis, the managing director of the European Jewish Association, for his speech. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Neska. Thank you, Mrs. Zovko, for the opportunity and for hosting this a very important book presentation. For me, it's a very fortunate, let's say, occasion because it's only my second day as managing director of the European Jewish Association. So besides the honor of leading such a pivotal organization for the rights of Jews and for combating anti-Semitism in Europe, it is also very important on a personal level because it coincides with my tenure, the start of my tenure as managing director. I would not take a lot of the time. I mean, we have people here who are much more, let's say, valuable for this event than myself. I would just like to highlight that on behalf of the European Jewish Association, we are very, very happy to co-host this event, very grateful for the support we received from Mrs. Zovko and her team, but above all, very, very grateful for all these people that are mentioned in Ari's book, that are here in Strasbourg, coming from a long way, or not so long, but that's not so important. Important is that they are here, and we are all eager to listen to what they have to say. And the message, you heard it also from Mrs. Metzola, is that anti-Semitism is not something that involves only Jews. It involves every single person in this planet, and we are trying, all of us, trying to put a little stone towards combating anti-Semitism all over the planet. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yorgos. Your words are very inspiring. I would also like to introduce my thoughts on this event and my involvement in the book written by Arija Mittleman. First of all, it's a big honor for me to be here with you this evening. The presentation of the book, Paths of the Righteous, Stories of Heroism, Humanity and Hope by Arija Mittleman, is organized in the frame of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, in which we mourn the 6 million innocent Jewish victims which have been mercilessly exterminated by the Nazis. In this sad occasion, we shouldn't forget the righteous among nations, those who in the darkest times, facing unimaginable risks, had decided to save Jewish lives. For each of them, the Yad Vashem Museum in Jerusalem has planted a tree. More than ever, nowadays, we need righteous people, those who are not indifferent, but ready to go far and beyond to help Jewish people and advocate for the state of Israel. The European Jewish Association, as a Jewish voice of Europe, is facing a strong responsibility today by promoting prosperity and security for Jewish communities while supporting the state of Israel, especially in these challenging times with growing security concerns for Jews in Europe. In fact, the new form of anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, is dangerously spreading across Europe. The delegitimation of the state of Israel and the definition of Israel as an apartheid state are stances which are wrong and unacceptable. The resulting fear of Jewish students on university campuses and insecurity in displaying visible Jewish signs, such as the kippah, are clear proofs that anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism are mutually connected. This is why education is tremendously important. Those who forgot the past are condemned to repeat it. Notwithstanding the hardships, there have been unprecedented initiatives in the last weeks. Firstly, the United Arab Emirates are the first Arab state to include teaching about Holocaust in their school programs. This brings hope for future generations in advancing good relations with Israel as part of the Abraham Accords. Secondly, the Italian Senate has just approved a fast track for a bill to make it easier for schools to set up memory trips to former Nazi death camps and teach students more about the deportations of Italy's Jews. I engaged in the presentation of this book wholeheartedly with utmost enthusiasm by immediately expressing to Ari my wish to read the book we are presenting today. One by one, I discovered the testimonies of the 8 charismatic characters who didn't hesitate but contributed with their best strengths to the Jewish people and to Israel. It is a great privilege to welcome here with us 4 of them. What eventually pushes, motivates people to accomplish extraordinary deeds? Integrity, strong vision, passion, or inspiration? There are multiple questions to one answer. People like them have the capacity to positively influence community and thus make this world a better place. I would like to underline Ari's generosity and dedication to portraying each of his 8 characters as exceptional personalities. I would like to thank him for his flexibility and for giving us the opportunity to gather here around his remarkable book on a significant occasion. I would like to sincerely thank the host, member of the European Parliament, Željana Zovko, who made this presentation possible in the premises of the European Parliament. Last but not least, my gratitude goes to Anja Kolimbatovic, working at Mr. Zovko office, who has all through proven professional and patient with the many demands we endured during the organization of this event. I wish all of you a pleasant evening, and I would like to give the floor now to Baroness Regina Sluzny, hidden child and president of the Antwerp Jewish Forum. Please, Regine, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. My 2 parents came from Poland. My father came to Belgium to be cured from skin cancer, because in Warsaw, where he lived with his mom, they didn't know what he had. And he was lucky that in Antwerp there was a professor who knew exactly how to treat him. It took 2 years to be cured. He was cured with pins with radium put in his face, and what was left over was like he had burned himself. But he was cured after 2 years, went back, got married in Poland, and because his uncle was living in Antwerp, he came back to live there because Poland was already a very bad place for Jewish people. Now, I had 2 older brothers, one who was born in 1932, the other one in 1937, and this little girl was born in 1939. Not the best moment to come into the world. And my father worked on the marketplaces. Well, the market was held in Belgium behind the churches, and he had to go and borrow a table to put his stuff on, what he was selling. So the people where he went to borrow the table, they knew Jacob with the burned face very well when the German army came into Belgium. And it was in these places that they could go and hide. My parents, in the 3.5 years that they had to hide, changed 15 times from a hiding place. That was after they went out of Antwerp, about 20 minutes from Antwerp, to be in a cafe. Was the first place they were hiding with the 3 children. And I was the only one who could go out of the room and play in the yard behind the house because I was blonde. I was lucky to be a little girl with blonde hair because before the war, 40, 45, most children in Belgium who had black hair were Jewish children. So I was blonde and I was the only one 2.5 years going during the day. Now the house next door where we were hiding, there lived Mrs. Anna and Charles, her husband, the best people I ever met in my life. The wall between the 2 houses, there was a hole, and I could go through the hole into their yard. And that was all I could play, going from one house into the other one. They had no children, but Anna, the lady, she had 2 cats. And when she made food for herself and her husband, she made also the same food for the cats. Now, I think that in all of the countries where the German army came in, it was not enough to have money to go and buy food. You needed also stamps. When you were in hiding, you couldn't go for those stamps because you had to go and pick them up every month. So we couldn't go because then you had to give your address. So we didn't have food enough every day. And one day when I saw Anna coming out with the plate with food for the cats, put it on the floor. When she went back inside the house, I went to take away the food because I was hungry. I didn't know that she was standing behind the curtain and saw me taking the food. So she came out, and from that day on, she gave to me food for my parents, my brother, and for me. That was the first contact with these people. Well, we thought that we were safe, but we weren't that safe. Somebody must have realized that in that house, in the cafe, Jewish people were hiding. And behind the houses from the cafe lady and Anna and Charles, they had a food shop. There was the German army was there, about 200 meters behind the houses. And one day, somebody must have realized that Jews were hiding, and he went to the Germans telling them, you know, there is Jews in the cafe, and the mayor had to come and pick us up. Well, we were lucky that he had a son of 12. He told his son, go to Charles, to the gentleman from the shop, ask him to go and tell the family that they have to go out quickly because otherwise I have to come and pick them up. When he came in, Charles came in, he said, Mr. and Mrs. Schlusny, take your 2 sons, take whatever you can carry, but go. I don't know if they had 3 minutes, 5 minutes. And he said, if you want, you can leave the little one with us. We have a room for her. We will look after her. And if you find a safe place, you come and pick her up. Well, that safe place didn't happen because they had to change 15 times. And I stayed with Anna and Charles for 3.5 years. I was a very, very happy child with them because they gave me so much love. There was food every day, whatever I wanted to eat, because they sold it. And they did whatever they could, more than if it was their own child, I think. I used to go to church with Anna every Sunday, but she never asked me to say a prayer or whatever. When they sent me also to kindergarten with the nuns, and when the war was finished and we were liberated by the Canadian soldiers, the teacher said, if you think that your daughter will make some studies later on, you better send her to Antwerp, because there the program is much better than here in a little town. So Charles wrote to my parents, who were back in Antwerp when the war was finished. And I asked Charles, how did you know where my parents were? Because they were hiding in 15 different places. How did you know that they were back in Antwerp? Well, I found out the answer. He never answered. He said, I found them because I brought them food regularly. And I found a few months ago that he was with the underground. And we could find my parents. Well, when the lady came in to pick me up, and I say, hello, madame, because I didn't recognize my mother. I didn't see her for 3.5 years. Charles say, that's your mom and you can go home now. And I said, well, home, I'm home. After 3.5 years, you feel yourself at home. I was happy. I had everything. So he said, no, you listened all the time you were here. Now you can go with your mom. Well, coming home, it was a bit difficult because my parents were very Orthodox Jewish people, living by all the Jewish rules, which I didn't know anything about. I had to learn Yiddish to speak with my parents because they spoke mainly Yiddish and my only language was Flemish. And my brothers were with my parents all the time, so it was another education. It was also a bit more difficult, but we managed. And before going from Anna and Charles, my mom said, how can we ever do something back for you, for all you did? You saved our daughter, but you also brought us food. And the only thing Charles and Anna asked was, don't take the kid away from us completely. So my mom gave her word that I would come every weekend. Now, I didn't know what Shabbat was till I was 14, because I used to go to these people every single Friday till Sunday. In the week, I was an Orthodox girl, and the weekend, I was nothing. I could do whatever I wanted. I didn't have to look, can I do this or can't I do that? At home, I looked at my brothers, what they were doing. I would do exactly the same thing, not to make my parents cross with me. So, and if I had questions, it was only with Charles and Anna that I asked my questions. I didn't never dare asking anything to my parents because I always thought that they suffered so much. I don't want them suffer more. So I was really the daughter of Anna and Charles, half and half of my own parents. All my life, I had to bury 4 parents. 2 stayed in Hemixem and 2 are in Olive Mountain in Jerusalem, because my parents wanted to be buried there. But I was a very lucky child, very happy one. And they were the greatest righteous people that I ever met. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina Slusley, Baroness, for your outstanding testimony. It's really touching. And I would like to give the floor to Ms. Dubravka Šuica, Vice President of the European Commission. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening. Good evening to everybody. Dear Željana, dear honorable members, dear Baroness, dear Excellency, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you for inviting me to participate in this commemorative event in remembrance of International Holocaust Day. Last year's theme, Memory, Dignity and Justice, will resonate long beyond its term. The preservation of the historical record enables us to learn more about ourselves as we learn about what has gone before us. This year's theme of home and belonging speaks to our common humanity. I congratulate Arija Mittlemana on the publication of his book, Path of the Writer's Stories of Heroism, Humanity and Hope. It is a basic human quality to connect with each other through our stories. I don't have a so touching story as Baroness had, but let me say a few words on personal note. My husband's close cousin, Rudimir Roter, who was a journalist, was personally involved in helping a Jewish family during the war in Croatia, in the vicinity of Dubrovnik. He was hiding the family of Abraham a long time, putting his life and that of his family at risk. After the war, he has been granted official recognition of this as one of the writers among nations. He is one of the Croats who is writers among the nations. When I was mayor of Dubrovnik, I took a decision to rename one of the streets in the center of Dubrovnik into the Rudimir Roter Street, just to let you know. It is crucially important that we never stop remembering and telling these stories. And thank you for your story. This was really touching. While I have not personally lived through such a terrible experience, I have personally also lived through a war in Croatia. So I believe it is a key part of my story as a convinced European Democrat. And now a few words on behalf of the European Commission. Europe's diversity is a crucial part of its wealth. We all should feel that it is our home. This is our story. The Holocaust is also part of our story, and it has to be. We must never forget the millions of Jewish women, men and children, as well as all other victims murdered during the Holocaust. This European tragedy still affects us today. Your book, Mr. Mittlemana's book, honors the writers, non-Jewish persons who demonstrated solidarity, bravery, and commitment to values. The celebration of interfaith solidarity is fundamental to our vision of a Europe of values, one which is based on respect, inclusion, and diversity. On the 27th of January this year, we will mark the 78th anniversary of the liberation of the Nazi concentration camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. We remember these events in a bid to prevent future acts of genocide. We remember these events so that we can educate and learn, to build a future that fully rejects these events, to choose another path. To do that, we must ensure that we never forget. The European Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, the rule of law, and respect for human rights, including the rights of persons belonging to minorities. These values are our first line of defense as we face new threats to our democratic institutions. Many challenges, from the war in Ukraine to disengagement, interferences from third countries, the pandemic, have all taken a toll on democracy. But democracy has the seeds of renewal within it. Its greatest asset is its citizens. More citizens are getting their information and engaging in the democratic process online. There are positive aspects to this, but unfortunately, there are also negative ones. We see a rise of anti-Semitism and hate speech online, fueled by conspiracy myths and Holocaust denial. These challenges are affecting all of us. The coronavirus pandemic, when much of our lives moved online, accelerated this trend. The challenges are more acute, especially given the vulnerability of our democratic processes to foreign interference. Putin's invasion of Ukraine highlights the need for prompt action to strengthen the resilience of our democracies. Citizens must be able to form and express their political views freely. Fundamental rights must be respected. Free media and civil society must be able to participate in open debate. And the European Union has created an unprecedented European democratic space. It crosses ages, borders, cultures, and histories. And it is a transnational space. At the same time, all of us know that all politics is local. I believe that all of us here today have the moral duty to nurture, protect, and secure this European democratic space at all levels and across all generations. To build democratic resilience from within, we must equip citizens as they engage in democracy. The protection of our democracy featured in the discussions during the conference on the future of Europe. We have committed to our citizens to effectively follow up on the proposals that came out of the conference, which was a truly transnational deliberative process. This is no longer politics, business as usual, and we have entered a new phase. And to conclude, as we say in the Commission strategy on the combating anti-Semitism and fostering Jewish life, to shape Europe's future, people need to understand its past. On the 23rd of January, we will organize the Holocaust Remembrance Conference in partnership with Swedish Presidency of the Council and the Swedish Presidency of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. Around the 27th of January, European Union representations across our region will organize Holocaust Remembrance events all over 27 states. Anti-Semitism and hatred have caused unthinkable tragedies. It is our common responsibility as Europeans to promote remembrance, research, and the education of the Holocaust, to ensure that future generations of Europeans will honor the legacy, to ensure such tragedies never happen again. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Vice President, your words are very, very appreciated, very, very important. And now on the American side, I would like to give the floor to Ms. Dara Paradiso, U.S. Consul General in Strasbourg. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And thank you to all the organizers and Madame Zovko, Vice President, members of the European Parliament present, Mr. Mittleman, heroes around the table, and ladies and gentlemen. Earlier today, I had a chance to sit down with Mr. Mittleman and learn a little bit more about his book. It is an absolute honor that you've chosen an American citizen to speak at this important occasion, and I was very proud to be able to welcome him to this special part of France, a European capital with a particularly open spirit and laudable local interreligious cooperation. I enjoyed learning more about the motivations behind the book, and it was an honor to meet some of the people who are featured and who inspired him to write and to look for the sparks of light in what has been a dark and difficult few years. As we all know, hate and particularly anti-Semitism have sadly been part of our societies for centuries, transgressing generations, cultures, and borders. In the United States, despite religious freedom forming the very core of our nation's existence, we still see anti-Semitism and other anti-religious hate far too often. From systematic rejection and stereotyping of the Jewish people to violent crimes like the attack on the Tree of Life synagogue in Pittsburgh, the shooting in San Diego, and the hostage situation at a synagogue in Texas that was just a year ago this last weekend. Advances in technology and access to information have made us more aware of these issues, but they've also proven to sometimes drive us further apart with mis and disinformation. And because people, unfortunately, sometimes choose not to learn about others and about other perspectives, but to confirm what they already believe. Unfortunately, this is not unique to the United States. Anti-Semitic incidents have also increased across Europe, exacerbated by the different crises our societies have been facing. And as with all the toughest problems the world faces right now, this brings me back to two fundamental points. Two fundamental points that we've learned from the transatlantic relationship. One is we must nurture and maintain the values of human rights, democracy, and rule of law. And two, that we are always stronger when we stand up together for each other and for these values that we hold dear. Mr. Mittleman's book, which I look forward to reading, highlights not only the responsibility, but also the great opportunity we all have in standing up to anti-Semitism and to all forms of hatred. As my boss, our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, said yesterday on World Religion Day, which is our National Religious Freedom Day, the United States will continue to advocate for individuals' ability to live in accordance with the dictates of their conscience and speak out on behalf of those who have been denied the ability to do so. Given that the EU recently presented its first strategy to fight anti-Semitism, and even more recently, the White House just established a task force to develop a national strategy, I particularly appreciate your invitation this evening, both to Ari, his delegation, and of course to us here in Strasbourg as well. It's a very welcome chance to continue our great cooperation, and I'm optimistic that we will continue to share best practices, to learn from each other, and to work together to fight anti-Semitism on both sides of the Atlantic. I hope that tonight's event will inspire and encourage all of us to fight hate in all its forms. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Darak Paradiso, Consul General, for your very, very important words on transatlantic relations, which are very, very important for us in Europe too. And staying on the American side, I would like now to open a conversation with Arija Mittlemana and his four characters, Ms. Marcus Totzer, Mr. Dragan Primorac, Mr. Aston Bright, and Ms. Gloria Garces. Please, the floor is totally yours.
Well, thank you, Neska. Thank you certainly to the organizers, and thank you to from the United States State Department. Like any Jewish event, there is food and dinner, so we'll have a conversation. We invite questions, but certainly we'll have time for informal conversations as the evening goes on. There's an expression in Washington that facts are stubborn things. I think it could be applied here in the seat of the European government. We'll start on a fact. The Jewish community in the United States, adult Jewish community, is about 2% of the entire US population. According to our national law enforcement, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the FBI, our European friends might know from movies, 59% of hate crimes that happened in 2021 were against the Jewish community. 2%, 59%. I think any society that's faced with that fact needs to have an open conversation. And that's what we're doing tonight. And we're able to do that tonight because of this transatlantic relationship and alliance. I'm originally from Pennsylvania, and it was 235 years ago in Pennsylvania in September that the Constitution was born. And that's because of the French people who joined us in the 18th century, our oldest alliance. So it's really an honor to be here and to start what I think is going to be a historic year in this transatlantic alliance. But also, as we know, and as was mentioned, unfortunately, Pennsylvania 4 years ago was the site of the worst, most deadly anti-Semitic attack in American history. And growing up in Pennsylvania, I don't think I ever could have imagined that something like that could happen in any state, let alone my home state. 11 innocent Pennsylvanians did something that I do on a regular basis. I think many of us do. They visited their house of worship. I didn't set out to write a book. I never consider myself a public person. I'm so honored to be here. I'm glad this is being recorded because I think my wife thinks I'm on vacation. But I was looking for inspiration. It was a dark time. It was a tumultuous time. As was mentioned, just 6 months after that horrible attack in my home state, there was an attack eerily similar, 5,000 some kilometers away in California. So I think you'll be inspired as we have a dialogue. I was looking for inspiration in these 8 incredible individuals that I feature in this book. Very inspiring. I'll end on this and then I'll pose questions and we'll have a dialogue. And then, as I said, I really hope there's questions from the audience and then we'll certainly eat. And we have book copies for those present and for others who couldn't make it. Thank God there's been a lot of momentum with this book. I had no idea what to expect. It came out last February and it seems like almost every other week there's an event. Nothing as special as this evening, but in October, we had an event in the state of New Jersey. By the way, the state sport of Pennsylvania is beating up on New Jersey, but it is a good state. It gave us Bruce Springsteen, it gave us Bon Jovi, it gave me my wife. But we had a great event there, and one of the women there, her mother-in-law, escaped from Sobibor. This is the concentration camp that now is on the border of Poland and Belarus. And I've stayed in touch with her, and she told me to send greetings. And she said, you know, the most important thing is I heard stories from my mother-in-law and done work similar to the Baroness's work, is to remember, and this is true when we see hate of any kind. We can all think of people who speak up, and they say that's not right, whether they're coworkers or neighbors. Unfortunately, we can probably also think of 10 more people or 100 more people who just stay quiet. It doesn't affect my community, it's not important. Unfortunately, we've seen hate is hate. And we've also seen that this is a virus and it spreads quickly. As was mentioned, it was just 1 year ago. 1 year ago, just this past weekend, that someone traveled across the Atlantic to the state of Texas with one intention, to terrorize the Jewish community. We also saw here in France at the start of the year several years ago, it's emotional to think about this, the siege that happened at a supermarket. We all go grocery shopping in Paris. The same exact hate. But it reminds us, and we saw this with the state visit of President Macron, of just the need to have this transatlantic dialogue, to really think of innovative ways to educate and to combat hate. I don't even know where to begin, because each of these 4 incredible individuals in America joined, but then we'd only do it with 2 people. So I think I'm going to pose a question to and Aston, who came all the way from Florida. By the way, we have other friends who came from the United States and from Canada. I'm so honored that they're joining. Aston, I'll start with you just because yesterday in the United States we marked the 94th birthday of Martin Luther King. And I'm curious, you know, as you think of Dr. King's legacy, if you think of his work in the 1950s and 1960s, what does his legacy mean now? And how do you carry it forward as you look to your work, which is incredibly inspiring, and the year ahead?
All right, thank you for that. I really appreciate that. And welcome to everyone. Thank you for inviting me here to this important event. When I think about the legacy of the great Dr. Reverend Martin Luther King, who was a champion of civil rights. He was a true friend to the Jewish community. He called the Jews that he worked with concerned friends of good. So they were, he worked very closely with them. And he has a very famous saying that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And that's something that really resonated with me in my life. And there's a lot of reasons why I got involved in working against anti-Semitism and fighting against BDS. But most importantly, it's because I'm a firefighter. And when people call for help, and I had a wonderful discussion this morning with Her Excellency, the Consul General this morning, about the different numbers that people call when they want to try to call for help. Like in the United States, it's 911. Here in France, I think they said it was, what's it in France when you, 112. Someone was saying it's 12 in their country. It's 119 in other countries. But the interesting thing is in the United States, when you call any of those numbers, 112, 119, 12, 18, whatever it is in your country, it's going to route that call to the 911 center and you're going to get help. So as a firefighter, it is my duty to respond in times of crisis and when people call for help. And I always like to say it's important that we answer the call because, and this is something I ask all the time, 80 years ago, who was it that came to help the Jewish people when they called for help? No one. No one came. And that's one of the reasons why when I got that call for help, as a fireman, I'm always going to answer that call. So I want everyone to know that anytime the Jewish community or Israel is in trouble and you call for help, just please know that I'm coming. Thank you.
I'll take us back across the Atlantic from Florida to Croatia. Dr. Primorac, thank you for everything behind the scenes this evening, and maybe more so for your work over the last two decades. This past weekend, I turned 40 years old. I think of everything that Dr. Primorac accomplished before he turned 40, and I think the next 40 years are the best yet to come for you. But I'm curious. I mean, you were deeply involved in the educational and cultural sectors and really saw the power of public diplomacy in your work when you were minister, but even more so in your work after government, deepening ties with Israel, with the United States. And I'm just curious also, once again, let's think forward, let's think positive about the year ahead. How do you use what you learned to continue to educate business leaders, government officials, but more importantly, everyday Croatians?
Thank you, Ari. Thank you. First of all, I'm very proud to be tonight and would like to thank Ms. Zovko for organizing this event. It's just showing how deep ties are between Croatia and Israel. You know, I was fortunate to, for the last 25 years, to work with the leaders of Israel as a friend, not as a minister. You know that one of my mentors was Nobel Prize laureate Shimon Peres. So from day one, he was telling me, Dragan, you don't have right to dream small. Because if you dream small, that's exactly what is going to happen to you. Then he became the deputy prime minister and we started a joint project called Unity Through the Knowledge, where only Israeli and Croatian scientists were able to apply. Then I started doing so many different projects, including project from the brain drain to the brain gain. We were able to have about 140 PhDs back to the Croatia by using the model. Then we made together translation of the science to the entrepreneurship. But if you ask me what was the most critical moment in my life, it was the period when I was young postdoctoral fellow in Connecticut and was flying Jewish friends from the United States and the leading forensic experts to establish first laboratory in the world capable of doing forensic identification of skeletal remains from mass grave by using DNA technology. So it was a group from the EPP-a United States Army, myself. So I was walking in the middle of the graves with my Jewish friends. They remember the Second World War. I was witnessing what is the evil, identifying thousands of the human remains. And we promised to each other that we do all possible to identify those people, but also that we're going to find those who committed the crime. That's the message. That's how I see the science and technology used to help humanity. During the time, I realized something very important that I would like to share with you. The anti-Semitism, it's a sign of intolerant society. And by ignoring it, we grant society with a broader license to hate. That's why we should stand up against the evil. That's what we are doing all the time. And Arya, if you ask me about results from my first meeting with Ariel Sharon, opening Israeli embassy in Croatia, doing wonderful work with the Shimon Peres, with my very dear friend Bibi Netanyahu, I'll tell you what we do today with Israeli scientists. The first place that started treating COVID-19 by MSCs, or what we call mesenchymal stromal cell cells, happened in Israel and Croatia. Today we grow organs together. We have first bones, 15-centimeter long bone in Israel and Croatia. Today the Nobel Prize laureates, very dear friends, Aaron Čehanover, Avram Hershko, and Ada Jonat, are regularly in Croatia. So we build together the future. We stay shoulder by shoulder together. That's why I'm very, very proud to be today with the people like Gloria, Aston, and Marcus. And I would like to thank you for all what you're doing for the future and why you are speaking up and working against the evil. Thank you so much, Ari, for the wonderful book you did. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Doctor, thank you. We're going to go back across the Atlantic, and I once again do hope folks have questions. Gloria, you've done incredible work across the Americas, engaging the Spanish-speaking community. We use the term Latino community as well. And I'm just curious, really teaching and educating about the Holocaust, about anti-Semitism with communities that I think largely never formally studied European history, and maybe have never met anyone of the Jewish faith. So I'm curious what kind of surprises, and I think folks would be curious how does this dialogue begin? What do you lead with?
How to make it happen.
Exactly.
So it's interesting because I think there are challenges both ways. There's challenges when a person knows, another, a Jew, or has a Jewish friend or a Jewish boss or a Jewish person that they know. And there are challenges when they don't. And there's also challenges with knowledge, and there's challenges without knowledge. Today, we've used a word that kept on touching my heart. I love words, and it's that transatlantic collaboration. And it takes me back to a concept that I teach people and I talk to people all the time, and it's what I call crossing the street. And it stems out of a story. I was sharing stories today. I was in 4th grade elementary school, and my parents took me out of an all-girls school that was a religious school and put me in a boys and girls school, a mixed school that was secular. And I was very, very scared. So instead of standing on the side where the bus would pick us up, I would stand on the other side of the street. When the bus would get there, then I would quickly cross the street and get in the bus. My first week was terrible. I would have people push me and shove me, gave me bad looks, would put, their feet so that I would trip over. And I was like, Mom, everyone hates me in the school. And she said, that's very strange. People usually like you. And I said, yes, that's why I stand on the other side of the street. And she goes, that's exactly the problem. They think that you're a snob. They think that you don't like them. So they're going to react to your actions. You are the one standing on the other side. And she told me, be brave. Use that gift that God has given you of a beautiful smile. Just cross the street and do your thing. So I was trembling and I crossed the street. And all of a sudden, the actions changed. People started talking to me, saying hello. Within the second week, I felt, I already had friends. And that's actually where I made my first Jewish friend. And the reason I say this is because knowledge, yes, it's wonderful. When we know people, when we have the knowledge of history, that might push us in a direction. But in reality, every feeling that we have, every action that we take stems out of 2 fountains, fear or love. And we have to decide, am I going to act in fear of what I don't know or of who I don't know? Or am I going to touch deep within and act in love? And when we approach people, I try to, number one, make a connection so that we can step away from fear. Then we tell people, we kind of sound the alarm. We tell them, look, this is happening. If it's happening to this group, it can happen to our group. It's been known to happen before. And then we lead into what I call the 3 steps. And I think this is very helpful. We encourage people to educate themselves, to get resources, to find ways where they can also spread the word and be activists. 2, we say, doesn't matter what you know, at least stand with our friends, stand with our Jewish friends. You can go and be there with them. You can grab your phones and be in social media, be supportive. And 3rd, once you have the resources, educate others. And I've seen one of the things you said, you talked about surprises. And it's interesting because one of the things that has surprised me the most is when I see people eager to help. They say, yes, I want to help. They come to events like this. They're touched by the stories. They said, I want to help. And then that dissipates. And it dissipates because I think it's a topic that can be so complex. When you talk about anti-Semitism, when you want to go back to the Holocaust and the horrors of the Holocaust, it's so complex that people feel inadequate. And at some point, all I want to say is, it really doesn't matter how much we know. It doesn't matter if we have all the knowledge in the world or if we have little knowledge. At the end of the day are we moving out of fear or are we moving out of love? And I tell people, move out of love. And we can only combat hate if we move out of love. And it works. Thank you.
I should have mentioned this, the pin I'm wearing, I told friends I would wear this. It says, United We Stand. President Biden and his administration had in September an incredibly powerful conference. But like any good conference, I think the difference between a good event and a great event is the follow-up. And we just heard what the follow-up has been. There's a whole of government approach that's happening to look at hate, and government plays a role, society plays a role, but it's really powerful. So I was honored to be at the White House at that conference, and really on behalf of these incredible people that you're meeting. Marcus, we're coming back across the Atlantic. You had the shortest commute to get here. Marcus is up in the Frankfurt area doing incredible work with restitution. He's an attorney by training. And Marcus, the Germany you grew up in is very different than today's Germany. It's unified. Czechoslovakia doesn't exist. Now it's 2 member states here. For example, we could all think of differences that have happened in our lifetime here in Europe. So I'm just curious, as you look at your work, and you look at German classrooms as a father, they're significantly more diverse than when you were a student. So I'm just curious, what conversations need to happen about history, about curricula, in an increasingly diverse Europe?
Yeah, Ari, thank you very much. First of all, before I'm going to answer your question, I'd like to thank our hosts here, the European Jewish Association, and more so, I must say, I'd really like to thank all these participants here tonight, especially Gloria, Aston, and Dragan. It's a great pleasure to meet in person. And the news for all of us, for all of you, is there are many more out there, exceptional, incredible people like them. So, well, what has happened? Indeed, I'm a trained lawyer, working on what an old friend of mine who passed away, unfortunately, many years ago, one of the Monuments Man, what he called unfinished business. And at the end of the day, that's what I at least try to deal with every day, unfinished business, to finish it. I know it's impossible because there's plenty of business out there. And what do I mean with business, or what does that mean, unfinished business? At the end of the day, unfinished business means a lot. It means to educate people about history. I mean, that's a human nature thing. We all ask ourselves, where do we come from? At the end of the day, and this is the experience, at least, and the most crucial thing in my life, when I discovered my family's past, which also goes back to the Nazi era, with a grandfather who was anti-Nazi, and with another grandfather who was a member of the Nazi party. So this is something which I didn't, when I was a kid, didn't learn at school. This was something which was hidden, which was never discussed in the family, really not. So I had to explore this and to find out myself. The question is, we have to learn from history, and without history, we do not have a future. And I think that's the most important message. And in this day and age, and in light of the upcoming event of the Holocaust Remembrance Day, we have to know our history, and we have to educate our children, like it or not. This is our legacy, and this is an obligation. Otherwise, we won't have a future. And perhaps I'd like to add something. When more or less for 20 years I'm dealing with so-called Nazi-looted art. Nazi-looted art is something which is highly emotional for many people, because this is a connection for many families. And I'm not talking about a Picasso or most valuable items. Sometimes it's black and white old photographies, it's some silverware, it's an old carpet, furniture, a book. And this is how people are connected with their own past. And Nazi-looted art, in how I see it, is like empty frames. Empty frames is has to be. You have to bring back memories. You have to bring back life. You have to bring back you have to bring back lives. We lost 6 million people during the Holocaust, and their pictures, their portraits have to be reframed. And at the end of the day, going back to your initial question, Ari, and doesn't really have to, it's not a matter whether you live in Germany, whether you live in Europe, or whether you live somewhere else. That's the message to our children, to educate them about history and to bring memories back to life. And this is a constant effort, and we shouldn't give up. Thank you.
I would welcome any questions from the floor. I would also welcome any questions while we're munching on any dinner and desserts, but Madam.
Right, thank you very much. I would just like to welcome the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, Mr. David Mc, who is here with us and giving his valuable input. And also, yeah.
I'm not seeing any hands.
But maybe, Mr. Mittlemana, if I can only suggest, because it's been quite a hard and long day, yes. And we have here Vice President of the Commission who was really heavily engaged. in her duties, and the Consul General. I would like to thank them for giving us an honor and for giving all the attention for this great event. I would like to thank European Jewish Association for co-hosting this event, and all the invitees, and Baroness Sluzny for giving us this really moving story about your childhood. Also to Mr. Mittlemana to bring all your co-authors, if I can say, of the great story of the righteous people, and our great Dr. Primorac, who did so much for Croatian science and for Croatian also politics, if I can say that, and maybe to propose that we just pass to the cocktail that you prepared, and to continue our conversation there, because it's been quite a long day.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything. Yeah.
I just want to let you know that on behalf of my fire chief, that we sent you one of our patches. And I challenge